you know, you hit on something. I want to go back to the whole idea of roles.
That's exactly where I wanted to go.
Yeah, I want to go back to that and just, you know, we mentioned roles, how the men are feeling displaced. Let's talk about okay, so what's happening to the roles? What's the solution to the problem then? It seems like there's got to be probably some pretty complex way to fix this, because it's a big deal if a whole society of men are not knowing how they're fitting in.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, I think a lot of it, I mean, you can't put blame in anybody's court. You know, there's blame on all sides. But I would say that one way that women can help men, if we're talking to women here, one way that women can help men is just by simply allowing them to fulfill what they're. I feel like men have this innate desire to want to provide for their families. They have this innate desire. It's just an internal part of every male that I've ever met. And maybe there are, again, it's generalities. There could be exceptions.
And we should say this is a topic you've studied. I mean, this is something you've done a lot of reading about, research, assessing, and so this is why this is something you feel like you want to address.
And there's been a lot of research on what happens when men are not in the home, and men are gone, and maybe they're even still providing, from a distance, but when men are not in the home, it causes some issues when they're not. I mean, now not everybody has the benefit of having both genders in the home. You don't always get that I would call it a blessing.
Yeah.
But that when you possibly can, I feel like it's super necessary, because men and women innately have different desires. Women are much more nurturing than men by nature. They're much better at where I mean, a perfect example is going camping with some friends the other week, and the one of the dads there, the child falls down, gets hurt, and bangs up their knee, and they're like, "Oh yeah, you can
good job,
son. Yeah, good job. You get up and deal with that." While mom is like, "Oh well, let's get the Neosporin, let's clean it out and make sure we take care of that so that it doesn't get infected." And when the man's like, "Oh, deal with the infection,"
So you hit on something huge here, and this is something I've noticed in families all over the world, and that is that the father actually instills confidence in his children. And this was a tiny example of one father instilling confidence in a child that fell down, and a mother looking out for their life, their health, and their needs in that way, their emotional needs and those kinds of things. Now that's so cool. That is a big difference between mothers and fathers, and I've noticed that a lot of children nowadays, because honestly, many of the families that I help who have really bad behavioral problems at home, many of them are missing a father. And on the BBC show I was featured in, they brought us 2 troubled British teens. Neither one of them had a father. And they all lacked confidence. They lacked skills, they lack abilities that are things that are taught innately by a father, right?
Yeah.
So it's an interesting observation there.
Fathers, play a great role in validating their children for who they are, and also placing responsibility. I feel like society has moved away from responsibility. I feel like fathers play a huge role in instilling responsibility in their children. When a boy gets to a certain age, the dad says, "Okay, now it's time for you to start, start doing man's work, right?
Exactly.
It's time for you to start doing man's work," and placing that responsibility where mothers, and again, general statements here, but in general, mothers would coddle all the way through.
Well, because they would want the tenderness.
Because they want the tenderness. They want the child to feel loved, which is great. And and oftentimes it's interesting because our society has, we have this social paradigm that the male way of looking at things is somehow evil. Oftentimes, you know, of the tough love, you know, tough love is often looked at as a very bad thing, but in a lot of cases it can be positive, you know.
Well, and that doesn't mean mean, right?
Not mean.
And when you're talking about mothers and you're saying, well, they often coddle, well, of course I'm the self-government lady, and so like I'm thinking, well, no, coddling is not a good thing, and I definitely don't do that. But am I more apt to understand what my child's heart is feeling? Lots of times, yes.
Yeah.
Because I've just been in tune with that since they were in me, right?
Yeah.
And I just understand it. I understand them in a different way than their dad. And when you say tough love, you don't mean mean, but you mean that person who says, you know what? There are consequences, and we've got to follow through with our consequences.
We've got to deal with the consequences, take responsibility for what we, you know, bring upon ourselves, and then learn how to deal with it. And I think that's, you know, that's
to be strong.
Yeah, be strong.
I think dads are. See, this is the ironic thing, is that these women, and I guess I have to group myself into it, because I was raised in this generation that did that. Even though there was a moment where I clearly went, whoa, the greatest power I have is in my home, and there is no way I am letting somebody confuse me on that point. And so, anyway, there was a point where I had that, but I have to include myself in the paradigm that women who are trying to be so strong, and don't get me wrong, because many of them really are, because they've had hard times.
Oh, absolutely.
So, that they try to be so strong, and they try to do it all, or remove the men from the picture, and in the end, the children oftentimes grow up very dependent, very weak, very emotional, very whiny, and that kind of thing, and that possibly, and this is something that we've just been noticing, is because the father hasn't been there to teach them about the strength that they need to have in those hard life moments.
Indeed.
Right? Even though mothers can teach that too. We don't want to get that wrong, but there's just something different about how a father teaches that.
That's
because he battles the elements with his strength. It's a different kind of a battle, isn't it?
Yeah, if there's anyone out there that think men and women are completely equal in the sense of our bodies are completely equal, you're fooling yourself. We're not equal.
I mean, biology tells us that,
Biology tells us that pretty well.
There are things my body can do that yours can't.
Yeah, there are things that a woman does better than a man.
Yes.
And there are things that men may do better than women. We complement each other, though, and that's where equality comes in.
See, I don't think one has to be better. That's a really
one does not have to
that's
be
a
better.
really Neanderthal. That's what I'm thinking. It's a really Neanderthal idea that one person must be, you know, the best one. It's almost bourgeois, isn't it?
The reality is that we fulfill different roles, and when we are honestly seeking to fulfill those roles and differently and complementing each other, that is when the family thrives.
And that's true. And you know, here's the thing, is that one big issue I've noticed nowadays is that children don't understand their role